Well, hello there. So, my name is Lisa Callahan, and I am the founder of the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group. And today we're going to be talking about three simple ways that you can turn your pain into your purpose. And I really want to bring this topic to you because it's the truth. Many times when we are stifling ourselves from discovering what our purpose is, we will use external things to numb our ability to find the purpose that we have to bring into the world. And this is very true because when you look at all sorts of different situations where people have been able to go through something extremely difficult and then come out the other side and be able to help others through the process of what they've experienced. And they're not sitting in it and dwelling in it and living in it, but they're actually using it as a launch pad to be able to birth them into the next part of their life, into the next part of their journey. Um, I'll give a couple of examples. Number one, I always go back to John Walsh when his little boy was killed. This was going back decades ago. But he took that pain and he brought it into the world to be able to help others with his purpose. It's his purpose in life. But at the same time, there was a tremendous and is a tremendous amount of pain involved in what he does, but he's serving a purpose for the world, and that came from his pain. Honestly, me. I went through a strugglesome time in my life with different things. There's no one to blame, there's no one to shame, there's no one to guilt or regrets. I don't have any of that. And yet at the same time, I know that some of the choices that I made in my life were done out of pain and done out of fear and done out of a completely closed mindset to live in my purpose. We had some tragedies happen here, actually, where I live in Coral Springs, Parkland, Florida. We had a shooting, and it was tremendous for our community. And so many of the people that were involved in that, they have stepped into their purpose now to help others, to help other victims, to take on political situations, things that they didn't have planned in their life at all. But they are doing those things because of the pain that they survived, the living through the pain, and not wallowing in the pain, letting the pain eat you alive, but using the pain to live. And so I know that a lot of times when we're struggling with an emotional eating habit, then what happens is we get caught inside of our pain. So things happen when we were young children. Things happened in our lives that we are not able to figure out. And things happen where we were very young at the time when they happened, possibly, or even as a teen, or even as a young adult, where when we had the things happen to us, we weren't able to make good decisions for ourselves in that moment. And some of the ways that we handled ourselves in our lives when the painful memories came to us and when the things happened in our lives, we might have been quite small. Like so small that we were only making the best decision that we could at the time as we were a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or even a 20-year-old, even a young woman. And it's not that we get older and we're supposed to just know everything. That's not true at all. A lot of times I thought that when you grew up that you were just going to be a grown-up now and grown-ups know everything. Not true. We carry our lives through us and we become guarded through our lives. And as we take the guards down and we're able to open up the experiences that we've had through a different voice inside of our head. Not the voice that tells us to be scared, not the voice that tells us to be avoiding things or be a quiet person or be loud and boisterous because we were not, we've had such a trauma happen to us that like there's no way we're ever going to take anything anymore, and now we're coming out fighting. Anytime that we're taking our pain and turning it into our negativity inside of us, and then we have to be able to comfort ourselves in some way. So we, in this community anyways, we end up using food to do just that. So it's like the things inside of us that we've experienced, the painful moments that are pricking us from the inside, like horns, like just thorny, horns that are sticking us from the inside. Those things hurt from the inside. And if we keep them on the inside, we have to do something to comfort ourselves. Sometimes, though, we are actually, the purpose of using the food is actually to comfort the ability for us to be able to try and get out of the uncomfortable. Meaning that we're using the food to keep ourselves stuck. We're using the food to fuel the pain so that we never, ever get to experience feeling the pain. Yes, pain is real. And yet there are secrets that come along with that pain. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Even if it's just the simplest thing, it doesn't have to be a deep, dark secret. It doesn't. It could be something as just as simple as, something happening when you were young where a family member, like I know that I had a cousin that I secretly was really, really jealous of. And that jealousy, that envy ate me up from the inside out. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be like other people. I compared myself to others. And so it was something as simple for me as a relative giving my cousin more attention than me, or I thought that they did. But really what it was that she was more outgoing than I was. I was awkward. I was inward. I didn't want to be boisterous and loud, and I didn't know how to do that. I envied it, but I didn't know how to do it, and it pained me. And you know what? She probably felt it too, just in the opposite way. And so we're all just living the best that we can. Like, we're all living our lives, and I want you to remember this, that everybody is doing the best they can with what they know at the time. And if something that they have done to you has caused you the most disgusting, irreversible damage ever in the entire universe, and you have to think to yourself, well, this person was not doing the best they could. Obviously, they hurt me. Even if that's the case, if you're now taking the pain that someone else did to you and you're now using it, and you're using food to keep you in that pain, to keep you locked in that moment where you're reliving the pain over and over and over and over, then you're not using the pain to serve your purpose in life. Because if you were, you wouldn't feel like this. You wouldn't feel like you're drowning and like you're just floating to the surface trying to get above the water, and like you have a little sippy straw and you're sipping little sips of air from underneath the surface. I know that's how you feel because I felt it too. And then the food, it's interesting because the food sort of makes you feel relief for a minute, almost like you have a floaty device on and you're like, oh, I can sit back. But then the food comes in and it starts to weigh you down and weigh you down. And there's like a big weight at the bottom, and it's like the food becomes like a magnet, and it just pulls you down again. And then you start to try and clear it. Maybe you'll go on a diet, maybe you'll do a cleanse, maybe you got motivated to go walking with a friend or work out a little bit or something, something clears, or you just have an epiphany and you're like, oh, I can't live like this anymore, I'm gonna change. And then you try, but you never get to the roots of the problem. And when you never get to the roots of the problem, you try for a little while, and so it feels like you're like floating back up to that surface again. And then all of a sudden something happens, and it's like that magnet pulls you down, and you use the food to get there. And so what we want to try and do is we want to try and be able to discover, and that's what we do in this group. We are a self-discovery system. So I have a program that's called Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System. And in that program, I teach you how to identify your invisible emotional relationship with food. It's invisible. This magnet, this pulling you down, this weightedness, this feeling like you're going to use food to be comfortable, but yet it's the most uncomfortable thing. It's the very thing that keeps you stuck feeling like shit about yourself, feeling uncomfortable in your own skin, looking in the mirror and saying nasty things to yourself, isolating yourself from social situations or from doing stuff. Even we even have, I know some of the gals in the group, in the community support group that I have in the Crush That Food Thing program, have shared with me that subconsciously, like starting fights with family members before they maybe go out somewhere, because then it kind of creates this situation where now they're not going to go. They're like, I'm not going anywhere. And it's a separation that keeps them isolated. Like, I'm going to push you away before you can do any more damage to me. And it's a really interesting process when we keep using our pain almost as a fishing lure. Like, we have that pain and we're going to put it on a hook, cast it out into the world, and reel back in more pain. That's not purposeful. And so in order to be able to get away from this and to be able to serve your purpose in the world, like, think about it like this. Once upon a time, in an unguarded moment, think of that word, unguarded moment, you were your best friend. Now, you may say to me, Lisa, I have hated myself for as long as I can remember. Well, that's great and all. But there's a time that you don't remember. And it's there. Even though you don't remember it, it's there. Now, the first time I ever judged myself, I was 3. 3 years old. I know that most of you have had that same exact situation. 3, 5, maybe 7, 10. Young, little kids. Well, that 3-year-old got this concept that I was fat. And it came from my sister, who was only like 9, you know? She was just playing with me, no big deal. This story isn't even something that like I've ever dwelled on in my life, but it did come out through self-discovery, and it's a silly story. It really is. Like, we were doing a race and I had just gotten a bike and I went down the hill and she ran across the grass and the lawns, like cut through the lawns, and I was like, I'm faster now because I'm on my bike. And she's like, want to make a bet? I'll beat you, you know? But she was older than me, so she had her thing going on, and she ran through the neighborhood and I went down the hill all, you know, but I had to go around the corner and it was a lot. So by the time I got up to the hill, you know, and she won the race, but she sang the Fat and Skinny song. It was Fat and Skinny had a race all around the steeplechase. Fat fell down and broke her face, and Skinny won the race. And that made me feel like I was fat. And because I was fat, I lost. And so I knew that even, you know, our body image, our body types, like, she was older than me, so she was, you know, 9, so she was like a skinny beanpole. I was always stocky. I was little and I was stocky, and I was always thick. Very interesting. That I actually am quite a short woman. I'm quite a small woman. I'm only like 5'2". But I always thought that I was big. So I had this vision in my head, and this story that I have, my story, right? It's not a mean story. It's like 2 kids playing. Like, so what? And yet at the same time, and like I said, I didn't take that story with me, and like, I wasn't going to college going, oh, my sister did this to me. Like, no, like, I didn't get married and be like, oh, this is horrible. Like, no. So that story is simple as can be. It's no big deal. But through self-discovery, through opening up my headspace and kind of feeling like, when do I like repeat that same pattern where, like, I was disappointed and I was angry and I was like, where do I bring that energy into my life? And as I started to open up space for it in my head, that story like shot right in. And it was like, oh, well, this makes sense. Like my behavior in certain times is really that of a hurt 3-year-old, and it was. And there were so many other stories that link that. So it's not like our stories have to be like ridiculous and horrible. It's just that they are ours, they're our stories. And maybe they are horrible. Like and it doesn't matter. And what matters is that they're your story, and how you're using them matters. Because if you're using them to hurt yourself, well, you're not gonna find your passion and purpose that way. Because it's kind of like you have too many things in your head. And so think about it, if you had like 10 packages but you wanted to pick another one up, you can't. You'd have to put down a package. So in your mind, if you have stories, even if they're not the front runners of your brain, like even if, but I do want you to think about it. Like, can you remember the stories from your past better than you can remember what you had for breakfast this morning? Like, is that a thing for you? And if it is, you got too many packages in your head. And so one of the first parts of this training is going to be 3 simple steps to be able to take your pain and turn it into your purpose. We can't do that before we get the mindset open. So when you're opening your mindset, you're going to have to start to think about things from a more open mindset. So I want you to start paying attention to your thoughts. I want you to start paying attention to your idle time. What do you do when you're alone? What do you do when you're just sitting there, maybe in traffic or in the shower or brushing your teeth or going to bed? Are thoughts coming up into your head? Are old wounds resurfacing over and over and over? Are there people in the world, in your life, that have hurt you so deeply to the core that you absolutely will not forgive these people who have hurt you? And are you using those people who have hurt you to turn inward and keep yourself in this uncomfortable, discontent, hurtful place from within because that happened to you? And if you're doing that, that part's on you. And I'm sorry if that feels uncomfortable. You're sitting and living in uncomfortable. If you're taking your pain and not turning it into your purpose, then the goal right now, the purpose of your, whole methodology, while it's subconscious, I know you're not thinking about this logically, but that's the thing about the subconscious. It's invisible. And that's the thing about this food situation. It's invisible. You won't be able to figure it out on your own. How could you? You only know as much as you know at the time. And if you don't know any better, you can't do any better. So that's where self-discovery allows you to open up your mindset, to be able to take your past pain and allow it to be, you can write this down, allow your pain to be the contractions that birth you into the next place of your life. Like literally think about it as you needing to step out of this skin that you're uncomfortable in and step into a new identity. Literally building yourself a new foundation, a new identity from scratch, and allowing yourself the ability to do that. Like you are allowed to do that. You don't know it yet. You haven't given yourself the opportunity. You don't even think it's a thing. If you don't know that it's an option, how will you know that you're supposed to be looking for that? So I'm telling you that it's an option. And if you're ready for that, then it would be a good thing to book a call so that we can chat. The second simple step, so the first simple step is to try and stay in the present. Make certain that when you're thinking about old stuff, when old things are coming into your head, just say out loud, stop. Say your name and say stop. And maybe even picture a stop sign in your head with 8 sides and just count 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Stop. I don't care how many times you have to say stop, just stop. Change the vibration, do something else. The second simple way to turn your pain into your purpose is to lose the label of your pain. Like sometimes we will call ourselves names of things that we have been told from when we were a child. Like you could be like, I'm a procrastinator, I'm a worrier, I'm I'm stocky, I'm I'm impatient. Well, when I was little, my mom always told me that I was impatient, or I'm a loudmouth. Yeah, I'm a loudmouth person. My parents always told me that I was the loudest kid in the room. Like take your stuff that has hurt you from when you were a child that you have been labeled with, and lose the label. Just literally lose it. When you start to tell yourself that, correct yourself. Say that's not true. That's not true. Because there's so many different versions of the truth, and there's so many different versions of you. There's the happy you, the sad you, the grumpy you, the tired you, the nervous you, the excited you, the pained you, the pleasure happy you, the sexy you, the the ugly you, the uncomfortable you, the right? There's like a million different versions of you. So therefore, there are also a million different versions of the truth. And if you're just stuck on one truth and then you're carrying that like a label, and I talked to my ladies in Crush That Food thing about like the Girl Scout sash. Like we want you to be able to take that pain and kind of put it on a sash, but it's like sewn onto a thing where you could like take it off and kind of use your pain to be able to share your stories like I do here. Or like I was giving the example of John Walsh, like he shares his stories, right? The people who like have survived a lot of these shootings and stuff, like I shared with you earlier, that in my community we have a lot of people who have survived this shooting. They use it to be able to push them into the next part of their lives, to be able to help others, right? And so they can have their badge and they can say like, look, like this is what I've survived, like it's on a badge. What we don't want you doing is we don't want you taking that pain badge and sewing it to your skin so that you can't get it off. Like we want it to be part of your story, but we don't want it to be your story. There's a really, really, really big difference. So if you are taking some of your pain and using it to label yourself, you have to be able to stop that. You've got to be able to change it. Tell yourself that story is not true. Once upon a time, that story was purposeful for you at the time. However, the very same thing that was purposeful for you then at the time is not working for you now in the present. And you can feel that because you have a discontent, right? Your body's not feeling connected. The things that you're doing are not aligned with your purpose. Like you're not making decisions that are both good in the moment and good long term, right? Because you're eating foods that are making you feel bad about yourself. So those things aren't good, right? Because you can't do something and on one hand and be like, you're the hand that's feeding you this stuff. And then on the other hand, be like, oh, shoot, I didn't want to do that. Like you're not wrestling yourself, although it feels that way. I know that. But it's because there's a label on you. You've given yourself a label. You've said, this is what the pain I was in. Now this is who I am. No, it's not. Not true. So we have to be able to break this habit. We have to be able to lose those labels. The third and last thing is forgiveness. There is going to always be an element of forgiveness when you're moving through this pain to purpose, like gap. When you're trying to close the pain and purpose gap, and let's just call it that, it's a gap, right? It's the gap between knowing and doing. And if you're in pain and you haven't used that pain to launch you into your purpose, there will always be forgiveness. Now, whether that's forgiveness for someone else or forgiveness for you, like you have to be able to forgive yourself, because you were part of something. Even if you were a victim of a circumstance and you're taking what you were a victim of and using it to bully yourself, again, now that's on you. So we have to be able to forgive. We have to. And if you're not ready for that, that's fine. You can do other things in the process. You can start wherever you're at. Self-discovery allows you to meet yourself where you're at. Right now, your expectations are way too high for what your capabilities, what your ability is right now because of your level of awareness. When your level of awareness is not yet open because you have too much stuff in here, we have to put one thing down to pick new things up. you're not going to be able to. But then you set your expectations of yourself so high that it's literally like the expectations that you set for yourself are made to bring you right back to that pain. It's literally being on like a vicious roller coaster, like a circle, like a circle. So I'm going to leave you with one last thing. These are a couple of questions. Number one, what would I be without my story? Who could I be? Let me rephrase this. Who could I be without my story? Write that down. Write an answer. What would, let's see, who could I be if my self-image changed? Because somewhere locked in this pain, we created an image of ourselves that is not serving us now, not freely in the present. And the last one is, what would the powerfully minded version of myself tell me to do? And with this, I will leave you with one quick quote about forgiveness. It says, without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. We are bound with chains of bitterness, tied together, trapped. Until forgiveness, we remain locked in our pain and locked out of the possibility of experiencing healing and freedom, locked out of the possibility of being at peace. Until we can forgive the person who harmed us, that person holds the key to our happiness. That person becomes our jailer. So whoever it is, if it's someone else or if it's you, you don't want to be locked to anything. You want to be free. All right. So anyways, time to go. If you would like to chat more about self-discovery and how that will help you to be able to build a new foundational relationship with yourself so that you can identify your invisible emotional relationship with food, you will see a link in some of the comments here, which will allow you to build to book a clarity call with me. Until next time, thank you so much. Have a great day.